Welcome back to my official podcast. This is Gaurav, and the AS's first test has obviously yesterday finished, and obviously it was on the card that England batting lineup would collapse against the quality Australian bowling lineup. James would not agree, I know, because it looked like the England batting is always rely on the Joe Root because he has been performing quite well for a very long period of time. What a year he's having. He's been scoring a lot of runs in this year, and look, this was on the card, and definitely we will discuss a little more about the current issues which is going around in India for the Virat Kohli captaincy as well, if we got the time. So Lucas and James Butler, welcome to the show, guys.
Hi, Gaurav.
Hi, thank you for having us.
So
Hello,
Lucas, all
James.
charged up?
First of
All
all,
good.
I mean, let's get into this, shall we? Let's get into this. First of all, congratulations, Lucas. Not that he had anything to do with it whatsoever, but well played, Australia. And have we learned anything from that first Test match? No, we've learned nothing at all. We knew that the top order for England was a shambles and was likely to not support Joe Root. Obviously, in the situations where Joe Root gets out cheaply as well, that doesn't help at all. And I think it's. I mean, I've seen a lot of stuff about should we change the bowlers and what have you in for the second Test. I think they should, but that's not because the bowling unit was poor in Brisbane. I think England bowled very well. Maybe didn't get quite the same luck that Australia got at times. You need a bit of luck in sport, and a few of the chances fell short of England fielders and what have you, and wickets with no balls and all those kind of things. But generally speaking, Australia played better than England. No problem with that at all.
So it means you are upgrading from the slate from the Lucas, isn't it? Luke, you're being very modest, isn't it, James? Okay, so first of all, let's discuss about in detail what happened in the first test. You did discuss about there is a lot of hole in the bowling lineup, but I think there is a lot of issues going around with the batting also. The England batting lineup moves from starts from Joe Root and ends with the Joe Root. So you need to figure out that as also, because I think Dawid Malan has also quite played brilliantly in the second innings. I just imagine before the Indian series he was not in a frame to play a Test cricket, and now he's playing at number 3 and he's playing quite well, isn't it, James?
Well, I think Dawid Malan's a really good example of a player that's had an exposure to Test cricket, has gone away after being judged as being a failure, despite the fact that he was very good in Australia last time around. Has worked on his game, has got more mature, has got better, understands his cricket a bit more, and has seen this as a second opportunity. And I think sometimes second opportunities, you see those as maybe hasn't got quite the same pressure as the first opportunity. I think he felt a bit weighed down first time around, and I think he's come into the second one thinking, whatever I get from this is a bonus, and that's not a bad attitude to have. And I think it's a good lesson to take that, if Dawid Malan can do that and come back and look like a Test player, James Vince, he's currently in Australia. James Vince is a very good player. Why is James Vince not being talked about for this England side?
What a talent he is, man. He looks quite an easy guy to.
Potentially a completely wasted talent, Gaurav, at the moment, because he's a really good player. And I think I would take him over the Zach Crawleys and maybe even Ollie Pope at the moment of this world. Because he's got a bit more experience. He understands himself, and it's about maturity. It's about understanding yourself as a human being, isn't it? As you get slightly older, you understand what makes yourself tick and what you prosper on. And I think, I'm all for. I get excited by seeing young talent coming into an international Test team, but you need to do it wisely and you need to do it carefully. And England are a mess in the batting. England are a mess, aren't they?
That's why I did talk about that. It's not only about the bowling issues; it's about the batting issues.
That's what I said at the top, Gaurav. I don't think the bowling was a problem. The batting's the issue.
Yes. And James Butler, just tell me one thing: who, apart from the Joe Root, and probably I've seen during that period of time that Malan also scoring some runs. Who is the other guy who looks promising to you that this guy gonna make runs in Australia, James? obviously Ben Stokes will take some time to obviously to so that he's coming for a long break after a long period of time. James, go ahead.
Ben Stokes looked a bit off the pace, I think, in the first test. Understandably so. He's not played for ages, and they've obviously brought him back in on name rather than on current form. Ben Stokes is a terrific player, so I've got no concerns about him, in the long term. But I just think you look at the options available for England, it is limited. I mean, I tweeted this morning. I mean, I've been a long opponent of the 100 in the UK. There's a structural problem in UK cricket, and it's not just UK cricket. It's world cricket really. It's chasing the dollar, isn't it? Chasing the dollar for the short-term money that white ball cricket gives you, and not prioritising red ball cricket. And it's in England, we've been guilty of marginalising red ball cricket. We've put the championship in April and May and the championship in August and September and not played it through the middle. And we had a massive problem last summer when teams were in bio bubbles and when teams were, when we were losing players to bad form. There was nobody playing county championship cricket at the time to actually put their hand up and say, I've just scored 250, select me. And they've got to get that going forward. English cricket has got to get that balance a bit better, because at the moment, I'd like to see the English summer like a stick of rock. You get the red and white stripes throughout. You get, white ball cricket's great. I love it, but give that the same prominence as red ball cricket, or give red ball cricket more prominence, because as an English supporter, you can't come to an Ashes series and moan that we're rubbish in the Ashes. If you don't get the stuff behind the scenes right, if you don't get the structure of your own game right, and there's too much talk about money and not enough talk about red ball talent.
As always, as one of our guests always says, I hope Lucas knows this, Michael Wagner, that everybody has to pay their bills. So obviously you can understand. So apart from the batting we have discussed, go ahead.
It's your fault, Gaurav. It's your fault all this, because you've set up the IPL.
No, not at all. Not at all. It's not my fault. Everybody's having their leagues. and Lucas is currently having the Big Bash League going on. Come on. It's not only for the IPL. I think the T20 had started by England, isn't it, if I'm not wrong? So why are you blaming us?
I've got no fixation with the Big Bash League whatsoever. Keep my name away from that. I've got absolutely no fixation with that league.
Lucas, just imagine T20 cricket has just started by England, and James Butler has going after me that IPL is the main reason. Come on, okay.
All your fault.
No, you started this T20 nonsense with the IPL. Well, you're trying to pass it to me. I've said from day one that the Big Bash League is the worst idea. Should stick with this, at least the state teams. So I'm just playing it cool. I'm not saying a word because I got nothing to do with the Big Bash League. I'm just here in a world of my own. So don't bring my name into that.
Yeah. Okay. Let's back to the cricket again. And just wanted to know about, did you guys were surprised? And we'll definitely ask with the James Butler first. That did you were surprised by seeing Jimmy Anderson and Stuart Broad? They were not included in the playing 11 even.
Do you want me to answer that?
Sorry?
Do you want me
Please
to
do. Please do. Please do.
I was surprised that at least one of them didn't play.
Yes, obviously.
I thought it'd be either or. Obviously, with the pink ball test coming up, and we'll talk about that in a second, because I think that's a massive red herring in this series. But I thought one of them would play. I wouldn't be averse to seeing Anderson, then Broad, then Anderson, then Broad, and play one of them, and all the way through the series. But make sure you've got that one experienced player in the lineup to lead the attack. So I was surprised that neither played. It's the first time since about, I think, before Jesus was on this planet that they haven't played together. So
they decided to do it on the Ashes.
And you've got to think as well from Lucas's point of view, with his great big Cheshire cat grin there. Yeah, what you to some degree, you do what the opposition don't want you to do, not what the opposition want you to do. And the Aussies would have prepared for facing Jimmy and Brody, and they didn't get either. So I should think they were rubbing their hands with glee. I mean, I think it is a slight kind of false argument in that I think England bowled very well. I think Ollie Robinson was terrific, but we knew that already.
Yeah.
We knew that he's a prospect, but we didn't know that it would necessarily translate to Australia, and it did do. Chris Woakes is always reliable. You know exactly what you're going to get from him. And I thought that Mark Wood bowled rockets at an average speed of 90 plus miles an hour all the way through. Jack Leach was massively disappointing. Australia decided to take him down and took him down in style. But I thought England bowled well. And I thought there was an element of luck that Australia had that England didn't have. But you make your own luck in sport, and if you're playing well and you've got the confidence, often the luck goes with you. So yeah, I'm not going to harp on about that. But I thought the bowling attack in the first Test match would have been really good. And if England had got something from that, because there was weather around, even on even today, I think it was supposed to be the final day. There was going to be some rain in Brisbane. So if England had managed to take it into the fifth day, you never know if they could have got away with a draw. And then you'd unleash Broad and Anderson in the pink ball Test match, and everything would have been rosy, wouldn't it? But you take these brave decisions as national selectors and going into a test match, and you kind of live and die by those decisions, don't you? And obviously in this case it hasn't worked. But I don't think the bowling was the problem. It's that England can't bat. That's the problem.
That's the main thing. Lucas is having laugh. I did give you opportunity, Lucas, because it's all obviously it's your time. But James, one more thing. You did mention that Jack Leach was a big disappointment in this Test match. But tell me one thing: why this confidence of the England management hasn't been that great to the Jack Leach? He hasn't played a single match in England once India was touring to England, if I'm not wrong. Moeen Ali was the preferred option, and now in the difficult times, once you see I think he played in the Indian series once England was touring to India, but he didn't play any single game was India touring to England. And again, in the Australia, he played this Test match and he hasn't performed to the expectation. Why he is not playing continuously by England management? This is my question as to you, James. Go ahead.
I'd always like to see a spinner in England's team, and I think relying on Joe Root's overs, despite the fact that Root is a very good spin bowler, he's not a front-line Test bowler. So I always like to see a spinner in the England side. I just don't think Jack Leach is quite good enough. I love Jack Leach. I think he's a terrific player. I don't think he's got necessarily the tricks. He doesn't move it both ways. He's not. I mean, I saw somebody when he was being taken down in that first innings. Somebody said, "Well, if a batsman gets your number, there's no hiding place as a spinner." But you see the very good spinners, and they alter their pace. They change the flight of the ball. They hold some back. They kind of change the length a little bit. They try and give the batsman something to guess. I thought Jack was just he basically just kind of tossed everything up on the same length and just let Australia crack him, and that wasn't very good. So yeah, that was a disappointment. I think if England have got to look back at what hasn't worked in the past, and Moeen Ali, you mentioned, was on the last Ashes tour, had terrible figures. Australia did the same to him, and I think if you're going to go in with a spinner, you've got to have that point of difference. You've got Matt Parkinson out there, who's a leggy. He could have played in that first Test match, but they haven't given him any Test matches. England made a big thing of not debuting a player in the Ashes series, and that's dangerous because, well, they should have put Parkinson in last winter and given him at least 1 or 2 Test matches last winter to see how he could go and to get that debut pressure off him. But there's going to be a stage possibly in this tour if it continues to go this way of having to debut a player in the Ashes series, because you've got the Lions as the shadow squad. If you end up calling somebody from that squad, the chances are they're going to be making debuts. So I just felt that Jack Leach was maybe the wrong of the squad they've got. I'd have played Jack Leach, but I wouldn't necessarily pick the squad they've got.
Just forget about the squad for a little while. Tell me, James, do you have in the if you look at the county squads and all that, do you rate any spinner quite highly apart from the Mark Parkinson? I think you did mention his name. Any spinner who can run through any team with this quality, James?
Well, it goes back to the structure of English cricket. You know, if you play all of your county championship cricket in April and May, and then right at the end of the season, you don't give the spin bowlers necessarily the opportunity to bowl in all conditions. You never get in England. You don't get the bouncy tracks that you get at the Gabby. You don't get the spinning tracks you get in India. So you're always going to get English types of bowlers. Obviously, they send people on spin clinics to India. They try and get people into different circumstances and different climates to actually try and improve their bowling. But I just don't think we've got that many good spin bowlers in English cricket at the moment. You know, you've got the Besses, you Leaches, you Verdi at Surrey, who's well thought of. Adil Rashid. I mean, I really wish they'd kept faith with Adil Rashid a little bit longer, and there's maybe other reasons around that, but I think Adil Rashid could have made a Test career because he's a very, very
Has he talking about Adil Rashid? Does he has the interest to play a Test cricket for a long period of time?
Adil Rashid's playing white ball cricket now. He's gonna and got no issue with
Yes.
that. I've got no issue with
Yeah.
anybody taking, chucking the red ball to
Yeah.
one side and playing white ball cricket. And if Adil's made that
Yeah.
choice, he's not getting any younger. He's got a bit of a shoulder problem. He's going to play white ball cricket, and that'll see him through. He'll make a lot of money doing that probably.
What are your thoughts on Patterson White from Nottinghamshire?
He's decent, yeah. I mean, there's some good spin bowlers on the county circuit. It's just, I mean, Jack Leach is a very good bowler. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that Jack Leach is rubbish by any means. He's if you stick him on a Sri Lankan track against the Sri Lankan batting lineup when the ball's ragging square, he will take you a fifer. Absolutely no issue with that. His test credentials, his record is good. He's averaging under 30 with the ball in Test cricket. Yeah, that's good. They're good figures. It's just against the very top teams on their own surfaces when it's not necessarily spinning. I don't think he's got a plan B. And if he's going to continue and be a feature in England's teams all the way through these series, he's got to have that plan B where he's able to just restrict the batsman and keep it tight. Australia obviously just decided they were going to launch into him, and they made that their plan against Jack Leach was to take him down to score, hit 4
and rightly so,
and knock him out of the attack. Yeah, and it worked, didn't it? Because Jack didn't have any answer to that.
Lucas, go ahead. It's James Butler is all yours now. I will not ask you some questions now. Go after him.
well, it was an. I actually thought Australia didn't bowl that well. I just thought that England were just dreadful. We saw that with Malan and Root in the second innings where they figured a way to survive from Cummins. Hazlewood, Starc was bowling garbage as usual, and I wasn't really that impressed by Australia's bowling. It was more like England's batting was ridiculously bad. And the worst thing about it, this has gone pretty much unnoticed, is their fielding. Their fielding was a joke. Their fielding was like Pakistan, like West Indies, absolute disgraceful. You look at Australia's fielding, everything that went behind the inside edge to the slips, they got caught. Nothing got dropped. Either with the England, everything got dropped, or they were too far back in the slips. That their fielding was just absolutely horrendous, and you don't get that with England. They're a great fielding nation. They've always has been. But I said to you this in a group chat, James, or not to James, but in a group chat. Who's England's best fielder? And the English people said, Joe Root. Okay, would you put Joe Root in the slips in Australia over Smith and Warner? Absolutely not. No way in hell you'd put Root past Warner and Smith in the slips. No way. Root probably wouldn't even be in the gully. He probably wouldn't even be a backward square point where Nathan Lyon's made that position his own. He'd be probably a mid-off fielder. Who's England's best fielder? Who's England when it's time to take a catch, money on the line? Who's their best fielder? And you can't really say for sure that Joe Root can take those because he's dropped catches like this in the past. Yeah, Ben Stokes, has injury problems, doesn't really field at slips these days. But
I mean, Lucas, Ben Stokes has dropped plenty as well. I mean, you remember Ben Stokes for taking some absolute blinders. The one in the Ashes off Stuart Broad was one of the best catches you'll see. But he's capable of shelling them as well. He's not perfect.
Yeah, but you go along these world class teams. New Zealand have Ross Taylor, Kane Williamson. South Africa have Dean Elgar, who's a great fielder. Australia, Warner, Smith, Lyon. Even their fielders up mid offense, fine leg Cummins and Hazlewood are good fielders. Where's England's best fielders? Where are those guys you can rely on to take a catch? There's nobody there. You can't even say Joe Root or Ben Stokes. There's not one person you'd put the money on the line for these players to take a catch. And that's unlike England. Alistair Cook, I think, was a tremendous fielder in those slips. And the slips is where it all starts. England have had so many fielders in that slips. They've had James Anderson. He didn't play in that test. I think he's I think he's a great fielder in the slips, hence why he fields there. They've tried Dom Sibley in the slips. I think they've tried. I've seen Chris Woakes in there a couple of times. In there that they don't know what they're doing in the fielding department. And if you don't know what you're doing in the fielding department, how are you when these bowlers like Robinson and Wood, who I agree with James, they were fantastic. I was really surprised by Robinson. I wasn't surprised by Wood because he's done this before outside of England. He did that in Sri Lanka. But I was really surprised with Robinson. And I think Rory Burns absolutely let him down big time with that drop catch. I think it was off Robinson, or was it off Robinson? Okay, it was off. He let Robinson down big time with that catch. And it wasn't a hard catch by him. I could have taken that. It was very simple, probably a 2 out of 10 as far as difficulty. Maybe he was wearing glasses, maybe his eyes didn't adjust. I can't find an excuse. And that's just not acceptable at this level. Like I said, England have not really been like that going to these Ashes series. They've had good fielders, but this fielding team, and it's not just in the Ashes, it's in other tests gone by. Ever since Joe Root is taking command of those slips, England's fielding percentage is clearly dropped. And if you can't set the standard in the field, how can you set the standard with your bowling and with your batting? And that's a problem that has gone unnoticed with the England fielding. Everyone wants to blame the top order. Top order's a disgrace. Let's not beat around the bush. It's pathetic. But their fielding goes completely unnoticed, and their fielding's horrible.
And just to add one more question, I know Lucas has asked a lot of questions to you, James, but I think just one more. Why did James Anderson stop the fielding and the slips? We have seen earlier that James Anderson was fielding at slips, but I think for a couple of months he has stopped the fielding in the slips. So what is the main reason? James, go ahead.
I don't know on the Jimmy thing, but I think Lucas is really correct on the fielding. But it's not an overnight thing. This, England have dropped catches on a regular basis through series, over the last few years, and there seems to be. You watch them in practice, and they catch everything. When they're stood there in practice ahead of matches, they will catch everything that comes their way. There's something about that long day in the field where you doze off for 2 seconds, and that's when the catch comes to you. And it's a concentration thing, I'm sure. It's about being, as a slip fielder, you've got to be switched on. When that bowler's about to bowl, you've got to be switched on, looking at the outside edge of the bat, looking at wherever you need to look at, and be ready to take that catch. Imagine that ball's coming to you every single time. And I think it's got to be an attitude. It's got to be a psychological thing that they doze off, because Rory Burns' catch, or the drop catch, was appalling. That went right into the middle of his hands, and somehow came out of the middle of his hands. And it's very much cricket. It's very much a 3-discipline game, and if the fielding lets you down, you've got no hiding place in the test. And if you drop David Warner on 10, or you drop Steve Smith on 5, or you drop whoever, and they go on and punish you, don't they? How many times you see somebody get dropped early, and then the camera 6 hours later is panning onto the slip fielder, saying, "Well, he dropped him 6 hours ago, and look, he's on 280 now." It comes back to bite you when you feel poorly. It comes back to bite you. But so no defence of the fielding whatsoever. From England's point of view, that is, if you're going to win a series overseas, and for England, the two toughest overseas destinations are India and Australia, and if you're going to win a series overseas, you've got to take every chance that comes your way. Run outs, you've got to hit the stumps. You've got to be on the game and really dictate in the field. And the body language has got to be positive. And if you're dropping catches left, right, and centre, the body language isn't positive; it's negative, and it gives the batting side added confidence, and they take that through and score more runs off the back of it, don't they? And I mean, if we may just concentrate on the top order for England. Hasib Hamid, I'm going to give him a pass because I like him.
I thought he was okay.
I think there's massive potential for Hasib. He's got a good
technique.
I
think he was also okay. Hasib Hamid was brilliant.
Yeah, I think he's got a good technique. He was a bit unlucky down the leg side in the second innings. I think there'll be runs for him. And we saw the difference as well when Has hung around in the second innings and got to 28 or whatever it was he got. Yeah. Joe Root walks in at 65 for 2 instead of 11 for 2. That's huge because the ball's lost its shine. The bowlers are a little bit more tired. You're into the next phase of the game. Joe Root's able to start his innings without the pressure of that new ball and without Hazlewood and Cummins with him in the crosshairs. And we saw the difference, didn't we? Joe Root looks like Joe Root rather than being somebody that's under real threat. So, the openers in this situation for England are massively important. I'm not bothered if the openers go on and get 150. If the opener can get, on a regular basis, 20 and 30 and get England through that first phase of the innings, England have then got the batting that is capable, potentially, of putting the foot down on the accelerator and taking that innings forward. And Joe Root comes in, Dawid Malan comes in without that new ball, doing all kinds of potential damage to them. Rory Burns, though. Rory Burns at the moment. I've seen a lot of people suggesting that Rory Burns has got credit in the bank. He's averaging second best of England over the last 12 months. He's scored 3 Test centuries. He's done all of this stuff. But I think Rory Burns is on a precipice at the minute. There is previous with Rory Burns that when he's got in a bit of a mess in the past, he's gone away, he's worked it out, he's come back and he's got 100. So he has got that in the bag, as far as I'm concerned, that he's a thinking cricketer. He's got a little bit about him and he's able to put things right and come back and be better for a poor experience. And no doubt Brisbane was a poor experience for Rory Burns. But if you are a left-hander and your right leg, your right foot is coming across towards off stump and outside of off stump with your left leg behind it, you're basically almost turning your back on the bowler and with your legs in front of the stumps. It's a recipe for disaster. A full straight ball is always going to be a problem for you, and that is something that he's got to work on. And there's not a huge amount of time between the first and second Test match, so it's not like he's going to be able to spend weeks in the nets sorting out this glitch that he's developed. I can understand why he wants to get across to off stump and try and nullify the movement outside of off stump and work out what he's going to leave and stuff. But he's just left himself an absolute sitting duck, hasn't he? Literally in the first innings. And so that's the concern. Ollie Pope is a player I've got a huge amount of time for, but there comes a time where a young player, he was the second highest scorer in the first innings, but it's a low bar. But there comes a time when the player has to stop being talked about as being a potential player and a potential future star and actually become a future star. And I think Ollie Pope's on the cusp of going either way on that at the moment, unfortunately. Because I think he is potentially an absolute cracker of player. Ben Stokes, as we mentioned, is undercooked and underused and underutilised and can only get a bit warmer as we go through. I think Josh Buttler, I felt, came out and batted better than I've seen him for a while. If Josh Butler's going to play...
Yes, in the first inning.
He wouldn't be my first choice wicketkeeper in Test cricket. We've talked about that before. But if we're going to play Josh Buttler, and I like to see a Jay Butler with 2 T's on the back of an England shirt, then I want him to come out and play like he did in that first innings. I want him to come out and be positive. I don't mean reckless. I don't mean stupid. I don't mean just kind of like hit to the hills with your head in the eye, with your eyes shut and your head in the sky. But choose your balls. And when you see a ball that you think's got 4 or 6 written on it, actually go for it. And I think that's what Josh Butler was looking to do in that first innings. He came out And in Australia, with the ball coming onto the bat a little bit better than it does in some of the other countries. In the subcontinent, obviously, you've got to make your own pace on the ball to some degree. In Australia, the ball's nice and bouncy; it's coming onto you nice and quickly, and should be tailor made for somebody like Jos Buttler to come out with that kind of aggressive attitude, controlled aggression to actually score a few runs there. So that was one of the few pluses I could take out of that first Test match, is that changing mindset. Because I think Jos Buttler's often got caught thinking, I'm a white ball player, I'm aggressive, I'm nasty in white ball cricket, I can score big runs. I'm playing Test cricket now. I should play within myself. I should play forward defensive every ball. I should be, really careful. And he's got caught between the two, and he hasn't been quite sure what to do. I want him to be at the top end of that. Use his white ball skills in red ball cricket, not ridiculously recklessly, but be proactive. And I think he was trying to do that in the first innings.
The same problem that had with Rohit Sharma also in the earlier stage, once he was struggling as a Test player, that he was caught in a two mind whether he used to play as a white ball player in Test matches also, but now all the things has been sorted out for the Rohit Sharma. Same goes with Jos Buttler. If he thinks that this ball I will hit in the white ball format, he should do the same thing in the red ball format. If it is in his hearts, he should go for it.
The only thing with Jos Buttler is the glaring frailty that he's got for me is when he's trying to hit through the offside, there is a big gap between his bat and his pad. There was one that Hazlewood, I think, bowled at him that just cut him in two, just came back, just nibbled back in at him, came back through the inside edge and through the gap. And he's always got that vulnerability when he's kind of launching a drive through the offside that might be his Achilles heel. But I'd much prefer to see a Jos Buttler not die wondering. If he's going to make a fist of Test cricket, do it on your own terms, do it your way. If you're going to fail at Test cricket, it's not the end of the world. You've got all of the white ball formats to fall back on. It's not like you're going to be destitute and not being able to pay the gas bill. If you're going to fail at Test cricket, go down on your terms. Don't go down trying to be something you're not. Don't go down trying to be Jeff Boycott or trying to play some different way. Play Jos Buttler cricket and go out there and be that in Test cricket and trust yourself. And if it doesn't work, fair enough. But do it your way. And there was some kind of evidence, I think, in that Test match at Brisbane that's the way he's trying to play this series. And I hope he continues to do that.
Well,
and I think, James, that's why England management has backed him for a very long period of time, even though he struggled in the Test matches. England management are thinking that he can change the game like the white ball format in Test cricket at any point of time, isn't it, James?
That's why they pick him. I'm not saying it's the right thing, though.
Well, you think it couldn't get any worse for England, but we have to mention this. The English Lions played a tour match against Australia A. And to say, James, they were not much better in that first innings. They were dreadful.
Just to come back in on that, there is a sort of a slight mitigating sort of factor that England haven't had too much of a warm-up. I mean, Australia are undercooked as well. And we haven't mentioned the toss, but England have had no practice in Australia, really, of any note, other than in the nets, in indoor nets, which you could have back home. But that's not an excuse. That isn't an excuse. And the Lions have been the same because they've arrived in Australia. The quarantine was longer than they were expecting when they first sort of signed up for the trip, and the practice game that they were having was rained off, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'll give the Lions pass because the Lions are playing the Australian A team an Australian A team that have played Sheffield Shield cricket. Michael Neser was an absolute pest in that match. Took a 5-wicket haul. He's been playing Sheffield Shield cricket for Queensland. But with the England team, I can't give that a pass because Australia haven't played that whole team bar Labuschagne, Nathan Lyon, Head. Apart from them, all the other players have not played a Test match or any Sheffield Shield, any red ball cricket whatsoever since January. Yeah. Apart from Labuschagne, Nathan Lyon, and Travis Head. So I can't give that a pass. But I actually want to go back to that Lions team. I looked at that English Lions team, and I couldn't, apart from Tom Abel that I've constantly brought up, I didn't know any one of those players. You know, where I mentioned this on previous shows. Where's the Luke Fletchers? We can laugh at that pace, whatnot. But where's the Haynes? You know, Haynes is the leading run scorer in that LV County Championship. Why is he not part of that team? Why aren't the best available players in the LV County Championship the players with the most runs, like Kieran Carlson, as I mentioned on other shows, and other wicket takers, leading wicket takers in the LV County Championship, like we see with the Sheffield Shield. You know, Nisa knows been the leading wicket taker for 2-3 years in the Shield. You got Bryce Street, who scored 100 earlier for Queensland against South Australia, who just came off 100. Scott Boland, same category as Nisa, you know, taking a lot of wickets. Why aren't we seeing that in this England Lions team? Why aren't we seeing the best of the LV County Championship players in that team?
I don't know. I mean, some of them are there. I mean, Josh Bohannon's had a good season for Lancs. James Bracey got a century.
Yes. He's one positive. He's actually one positive you can take out of this whole match, and he didn't even play for England. Yeah.
And I'd like to see Bracey get another opportunity for England at some stage. Whether the Ashes is the right time to do it, because you know, after having a couple of bad Test matches for England, a lot of people have written him off. And you know what it's like. As soon as you go back into the England side, he's under the microscope. I'd like maybe if Bracey gets a home test against Bangladesh or something like that, rather than an away Ashes test where people can just pick him apart again, is a different thing. But yeah, what I was disappointed with, I mean, they gave Don Bess a game for the Lions and took him out of the main squad to give him some overs for the Lions, and didn't play Parkinson. Didn't play. Was it Mason Crane? And I thought that was a mistake. You know, get them some overs, because Parkinson, I think, you know, even despite the fact that obviously there's somebody in that England selection committee doesn't think Parkinson's the right fit at the minute for whatever reason, and you know they've got to trust their own judgment. But at some stage in the 5 Test matches, he might get a game, so you've got to get some overs under him. You've got to get some overs into him, because make him a potential candidate rather than. He spent all last winter carrying the drinks for the England full team. Now he's carrying the drinks for the Lions, and he's a potential Test player. That's just not the right way of playing him.
You know, going back to that the LV County Championship, you know, I mentioned Haynes. He's the only player that scored over 1,000 runs this season. You know, with an average of 50 plus. Why is he not in this, at least with this touring party? You know, a guy that's got over 1,000 runs in one season. You know, don't tell me he's one of those batsmen, you know, you can use like Luke Fletcher or Dibbly Dobbly, only can play in his conditions. You know, is Tom Haynes one of the? Sorry, Tom Haynes. What's his first name? I forgot his first name. Help me out here, James. Is it Tom?
I think it is Tom, isn't it?
Okay, yeah, Tom. What, you know, is it one of these? Oh, he can only bat in his home conditions, but he scored over 1,000 runs in the championship. Why isn't he in this team? That's unbelievable.
I mean, there's obviously some players in there like James Bracey that they like the look of, and has had previous. So there's players like come down from the Test level into the Lions, so it kind of works both ways. It's not just young potential; it's players that they want to kind of keep in the frame. The Sack Mahmoods of this world who have played for England white ball that are in that squad as well. So there's only a certain amount of shirts you can take on the trip, but I agree. I mean, and everybody's gonna have their own different opinions on who should be in various squads, but there are some that are glaring omissions, and that would probably be.
Is that a policy that you agree with? Letting recycled Test players play in English lines instead of young players. Is that something you agree with?
Absolutely, because I think you've got to look at the English Lions as the kind of the B team, the shadow team. And I think if you've got a player, there's nothing worse, I don't think, than a player playing for England, like a James Bracey, say, coming into the Test team, playing 2 Test matches, being discarded, going back to Bristol, never hearing from anybody again, and being completely out of the loop, not knowing what he's got to do to try and impress. By having the players that have had a little bit of a step up and then had to take a step back in the Lions setup, being part of that England bubble, you are giving them positive signals that their career is not over for a start, that they're not going to be just discarded, and they're able to actually work with the coaches, aren't they, and work with the people to actually get themselves back on track and be seen as being, because I think there's a lot of if you play for England, like Dawid Malan's proved, if you play for England and then you dropped, it doesn't mean that's you finished as an international player. It just means that chapter of your international career is finished. And I think you need to set people up to be able to bounce back and to learn from their mistakes. And I think you can actually be a better international player by having one failed experience and coming back and knowing it better the second time around.
Okay, we want to get into the second test. So obviously, Leach and Woakes gets dropped for Broad and Anderson.
I'd say Leach and Woakes or Leach and Wood, because the only thing with keeping Woakes in, I guess, is that you got very samey attack, and Wood gives you that pace, doesn't he? So that's but one of the two. But Leach has to go out, I think, to get because you've got the potential swing there, haven't you, with a ping ball.
Speaking on Leach, is he done? Will we see him for the rest of the series?
I mean, it's a danger, isn't it, when you get a player that gets that scar like that? Rishabh Pant did it for him when England played India. Rishabh Pant took Jack Leach on and deposited him over long on for a few sixes, and his figures that day were pretty poor. But then he bounced back in that test, and he bounced back in that series and took wickets further down the line. I think England will trust in him, and England will bring him back. But it's a bit of a mental battle, that, isn't it? When you've been almost like publicly humiliated. I think he's got the second. I think he's got the top two most expensive analyses over a certain period, over sort of like 8 or 9 overs for England now in Test cricket. One against Rishabh Pant, one against the Aussies. I don't know with Jack Leach, to be honest, but he's who would come in instead. If they're not going to pick Parkinson, and it doesn't look as if the Parkinson's on the next step, does it? The way they've picked that Lions team doesn't look like Parkinson's on the next run. It looks like Best would be the next one in. Well, you know what would happen if Best comes in? They'd try and take him down as well.
Well, they did that to a certain degree in that Australia A game, where I looked at Bez because he's also another spinner that probably would play. I looked at his average and wicket takes. He took wickets, but he was got 5 and over. So they really took care of him as well. The Australian A, especially Nick Maddison, Mitch Marsh, because Mitch Marsh had a strike rate of 70 runs off like 30 balls. Nick Maddison had the same thing. So they really also went after Dom Best. So it's no doubt there's a premeditated plan that Australia, Justin Langer, get after these spinners. No matter who's the spinner, whether it's Bess, whether it's Joe Root, whether it's Jack Leach, really, really go after them. And boy, they absolutely did it. It was an absolute beat down. And I don't want to be disrespectful to Jack Leach, but that's what it was, James. No, it was a beat down.
You're quite right, and I think that is why it's another potential feather in Matt Parkinson's claims, because neither Best nor Leach play a lot of white ball cricket. Best has started to play for Yorkshire in the T20, but neither are known as being white ball cricketers. Whereas Parkinson's kind of made his name almost in white ball cricket, and the red ball's been tagged on, and his record in red ball's very good now. And
he's a leg spinner, just to clarify that. The leggy,
he's a leggy. But if on the basis that he's used to batsmen in T20 cricket having a real crack at him, if he comes into the Test arena and Australia use the same tactics against Matt Parkinson, right, we're going to hit him out of the attack. We're going to absolutely give it. He's used
which
to
they
that
will,
kind of challenge, because he's used to that, against the white ball. So he's got the variations. He's got the change of pace. He's got the difference in flights and what have you to try and combat somebody having to go at him in T20 cricket. So he might actually be the one that's the most geared up for the Australian assault on the England spinners.
But they're not going to pick him, are they?
It doesn't look like it, does it?
No.
Okay. You did mention about the Matt Parkinson. I think I just want to ask one thing about the openers, especially. You did talk about the Rory Burns also. Tell me one thing, James. Why is this has been a period? I think there has been a problem for a long period of time, because England are finding very difficult to find a regular opener for the test in the Test arena. I think only opener who was successful during the long period of time, the opening pair I'm talking about, Alastair Cook and Andrew Starc. Since the Andrew Starc retired, I think the only opener who played quite a long period of time, and another pair, and the other guy who was obviously rotating in the team, Alistair Cook has been remained the same. Okay, and still now it has been the problem. I think for the England team, the first choice of opener is Rory Burns right now. I think he has to be in the team. That's what England management are thinking. And the other guys has been rotating, like Hamid was earlier there. Jack Crowley has been tested, and just forgetting Dom Sibley has played some of the game. So who has been the perfect opening pair for you guys? James Butler, go ahead.
Well, for England now,
Yeah.
I mean,
Take your time, James. Take your time.
I think England have been guilty. I think England have been guilty over the years of wanting instant success from openers. It's a tough job opening the batting in Test cricket. You look around the world, there aren't many.
Especially in England, James. Especially in England.
No, but in any team, there aren't many openers that have got stellar records.
I'm talking about the openers to survive in England condition. There, it is a very difficult to stay in the England condition to bat as an opener.
But it's the same around the world. You know, it's not just England. And yeah, so it's a tough job. And I think England have had the likes of Michael Carberry, Adam Lyth for a while, and they had who else was there? Sam Robson's a good player. He's had a good season for Middlesex, who may be on the verge of coming again, but he's getting a bit older now. Although he's an Aussie, he's out there now, I think, playing cricket in Australia. But I think they need to give people time, but there's that balancing act, isn't there? It's giving the right people time, because they gave Sibley time, and Sibley never really kicked on. They're giving Burns time. Now Burns' record isn't horrendous, but his technique at the minute is corkscrewing himself into the ground when the bowler's going to bowl. So I don't know. I mean, my answer is I honestly don't know.
I want to go back to Rory Burns, because we go back to that 2009 Ashes series, and outside of, well, I don't think Joe Root had a good series that either, but the one that really stood out was Rory Burns, where he made those 200s, and we were thinking, well, hang on a second, England have a serious opener in the works, and ever since that series, he's absolutely fallen off his cliff. His technique is gone. It looks like he's never picked up a bat in his life. So what has been the problem with Rory Burns? Is it a new batting coach? Someone's telling him to change his technique? Because he is a shadow of himself, what we saw in 2019.
I think the problem, Lucas, with Rory Burns is that there are so many moving parts to him. You watch Joe Root at the crease, he's very still, and the bat comes down. It's very simple, isn't it? You watch Rory Burns, and he fidgets. His neck goes, his head goes, he then ducks, he then comes back up again, his bat waggles. There are so many moving parts to that technique that if one part just drops out, it has a knock-on effect so you can go from being okay. So I don't think he's ever in Test cricket been brilliant, but I think you can go from being good in Test cricket. One of those bits just starts to drop off, and it's like the cogs all start to grind against each other, and the whole technique looks infallible. But I mean, it's just all wrong at the minute. I mean, that still of his left leg coming across his right, to his right leg. He's a left-hander, isn't he? Right leg coming across. You just can't get into that position in Test cricket and expect to score a run.
Just on that comment, he said he never has been brilliant. I have to disagree, because, like I said, that 2019 Ashes, that was unbelievable by a young player. Now I could be wrong here, but I didn't see that movement in the 2019 Ashes compared to now.
But having said that, when he came in against, I can't remember what year was the Ireland Test, where they had the one-off test against Ireland.
2019, just before the Ashes, after the World Cup.
Because that's why I mentioned it, because in that Test match he looked awful, and everybody
did, James. To be honest, I remember that Test match. They all did. Hangover. It looked like it was the hangover from the World Cup.
But Rory Burns was awful. And everybody was saying his technique is shocking. He's absolutely horrendous. Everything is wrong with this lad. They should get him out of that England Test team straight away. I was one of them. I was saying, he's absolutely a shocker. And then you scroll on a couple of months, like you say, he's got 2 centuries against Australia in an Ashes series, and everything's great. So there is that history with Rory Burns of looking absolutely dog rough as a Test player, and then just a couple of weeks later, he's sussed it out and he's got that mental ability to kind of get himself tuned back in again. Now, whether 4 days between the first Test match and the second Test match gives him that chance to do that is a different question. He's definitely got some grit about him. He's definitely got some character there and some determination. He's got the ability to battle along. He's got some stamina. But at the moment, his technique is an absolute mess. So he's got a lot of work to do. And whether he's got time between the first and second Test match to do that is a totally different question. But as I say, there is that precedent there with him that he's been a mess before and he's got it sorted.
Yep.
Speaking about the question, let's take a question. England can go with the Johnny Bairstow at top. What's your thought?
Absolutely no.
Oh, please do. Oh, please do. Please do.
I love Johnny. I love Johnny Bairstow, but he's not an opening batsman in red ball cricket. That's your answer. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, you must be getting really desperate to put Johnny up on the top order, mate.
Sorry, Gaurav.
I think he will be very handy enough in middle order. But I think Ollie Pop is not scoring a lot of runs, isn't it?
Well, I think the selection came down between Ollie Pope and Johnny Bairstow for that number 6 spot in the first Test match, and they went with Ollie Pope. I've got no issue with that. If they'd gone with Johnny Bairstow, I probably wouldn't have had an issue with that either. But certainly, if Johnny is walking out to open the innings in the second Test match, I don't think it'll just be me that's surprised. I think he would be surprised.
I know Cricket Australia like resting their bowlers, but you know, if they're going to send out Johnny in the opening second Test, you know, we might as well not even play Starc, Hazlewood, and Cummins. We might as well just send out a second string unit. That will do.
he's not that bad, but he's not. But you don't. I've got a massive thing about you don't.
That seems like a white ball move to me. That seems like a white ball move.
I've got a massive thing about not selecting a Test team on white ball form, and I've got a massive thing about when you do select a Test team, put people in the right slots. Don't just because a batsman at number 5 has scored a load of runs and you're losing an opener. Don't move him up to open. Find an opener to fit that spot. You put it's horses for courses, and Johnny is not a red ball opener. Never has been.
Okay. Let's take one more question. England can neither win at home and away. I think this is a proper sledge. James, you can give an answer.
Was it Atul Barai? I'm going to name him. Atul Barai.
Yes.
Disgraceful question. Absolutely disgraceful question.
One more question. I am sure England will make a strong comeback in next match and level the series 1-1. This is a sledge to Lucas.
You see, I mean, this is where Amit comes in. Amit Agarwal against Atta. I mean, that's a far better question.
I think England might need Agarwal in that opening spot. I think he might do better than some of the English openers going around Agarwal. I actually let's go away from the Ashes.
Actually, just Lucas, before you do, what was the score against India in the last home Test series after one match?
Oh,
okay, the one of the Gabba. Oh, okay, all right. Oh well. It goes to show. Yeah, it actually goes to show, James, that we don't need to play any Test match cricket for 10 months, and then we can actually beat England. So, you know, heaven forbid what would have happened if we had a 3-match series before England. You know, it could have been real nasty.
Okay, you made a very strong point, James. I just wanted to ask one more thing about the same point of question that you asked me. What happened to the Australian team when India toured to Australia last time? Just one more point. Just one question I want to ask. What is this thing that is missing in this England team that India had once they toured to Australia, that they beat in Australia in the second period of time? What is the thing
that the
England team are missing?
A cricket player. That's what they need, a cricket player.
Gaurav, you can only ask that question in a few Test matches, can't you? Because we don't know that it's missing at the moment, do we?
One probably fine. What's wrong with Steve Smith, guys? That's actually a very good question. Because we all know what Steve Smith did in that 2019 Ashes series, and we still couldn't win the damn series, which hurts me more. So, you know, since that series, Steve Smith has only got 100. So he's been below average for 2 years now. And against England, he was no better. That was a really poor shot he played for a guy that's got a lot of patience. That shot he played was like a white ball shot. He's been playing too much white ball cricket. He just wanted bat on ball. And this is why I didn't really want the Test players playing in that T20 World Cup. I preferred them go to Sheffield Shield, but Steve Smith hasn't made a run in 2 years. Of course, you say 100 in 2 years is pretty good. It's not terrible, but by Steve Smith standards, that's clearly below average. And
But
I'm not saying
he hasn't played for a year, has he? I mean, Australia haven't played for a year, so that stat is a slightly misleading.
Yeah, true. Yeah, but I'm not. Don't get this the wrong way. I'm probably going to get absolutely killed here. But I think Steve Smith's best days are done. I think he's at the twilight of his career, just like Virat Kohli.
James Butler don't mind at all. James Butler don't mind at all. James Butler is very happy.
I think I'm gonna put these on. I can't believe I just said that, but I because he's 32 now, around the same age as Virat Kohli. Virat Kohli's struggling at Test level, and I see the same qualities with Steve Smith struggling as I did with Virat Kohli. So again, I hope I'm wrong, but I just, that's not to say that he won't make hundreds, but I just don't think he'll ever have that 600, 700 plus run series like he did in England again against anybody ever again. I think that was his one last huge Bradman-esque innings series. I don't think he'll replicate that, but I'm not saying he'll be a bad player. I still think he'll score hundreds every now and then, but I just think his best days are gone away from Steve Smith, unfortunately, because he's one heck of a player. But this might find you surprising, James, but Steve Smith statistically rise in Australian cricket. He's not even top 5. And I did some research about that. And Steve Smith has played far more or less Test matches than the likes of Ricky Ponting, Alan Border, such and such. It just goes to show you that over the years that T20 ODI cricket has taken over Test match cricket.
Yeah.
There's far less Test match cricket being played. Steve Smith has been around for a lot of years. Even when he was batting at 6 or when he came in as a spinner in 2009. So he's been around a very, very long time. But he's only played 67 Test matches. That's for someone that's been around for over 11, 12 years. He's probably going to have a 14, 15-year career. To only play that certain amount of Test matches, that's staggering to me. I find that bizarre.
He was banned for quite some time, and then he hasn't played since January. So there are big gaps in that.
There are little gaps, but still, it just goes to show you that T20 and ODI cricket have completely more T20 have just completely taken over the Test.
Well, it always used to be that
structure.
You'd play a Test series, and then you'd rack on a couple of ODIs or something off the back of it, and that would be the white ball bit, wouldn't it? But nowadays, the ODI, you have specific ODI tours, don't you? You don't actually have Test matches on some tours.
And I remember Australia played West Indies, back in the early 2000s. They used to be 4 Test series. They used to be like very big, and with these nations, you get 2 Test series. And, the New Zealand and India series was a great example of that. That doesn't deserve to be a 2 Test series. Two big nations like that.
Do you think if you're going to have a World Test Championship and you're going to, this is where the all about the money line comes in.
Yeah, sadly.
Should the Ashes be a 5 Test series? Should the Ashes be 5 Test matches? Or should it be 3 or 4? Or and should we have every Test series, regardless of who it's between, being 3 Test matches in duration or something like that, so you can actually have time between series to regroup and get ready for the next one? Because at the moment there's just too much cricket. England, you look at how many Test matches England have played in the last 12 months.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. They've played twice as many as most countries. They've played far more than India have played, and you're expecting these guys who are living out of suitcases in hotel rooms almost 365 days of the year, not seeing their wives, not seeing their girlfriends, not seeing their kids, missing the birth of their children, etc. To be performing at 100% every day of the week, that's just not humanly possible.
To answer your question properly, yeah, it's either 5 test matches or nothing for me when it comes to the Ashes. But you made a very good point where you said, you'd have these big test series, and at the end they'd have a couple of white ball series. Now that's not the case. We saw Australia go to West Indies and Bangladesh just to play these ridiculous, no one cares white ball cricket matches that no one gave a stuff about. I think cricketers like Glenn Maxwell complaining because it wasn't even on TV in Australia, going ballistic over tweeting and saying, why isn't this game on Australian TV? But, you're absolutely right with that. It was unheard of 10, 15 years ago. Yeah, T20 was around, but, you wouldn't go to pointless tours just to play T20. You'd have at least a test match. And I understand what you just mentioned also. It's about money. Money-wise, you'd rather have 5 T20s and 1 test match. You'd rather even have 3 T20s and 1 test match. So, because the money is much more beneficial. I think that's wrong, James. I think that's terrible, James, in my opinion. But I understand it
as well, Lucas, because the reason that we play, or when I say we, England play 5 test matches against India and against Australia.
Yeah.
Because they're the lucrative test series, aren't they? They want to wring out everything they can of those series, and you get. I mean, I'd like to see. We haven't played Bangladesh in a test series in England for I don't know how long, not in living memory. Zimbabwe have got issues, I know, as a country in terms of a cricket board and stuff, but we haven't played Zimbabwe for I don't know how long. When are we going to get to see some of these countries? I mean, we talk about spreading the wealth around the world in terms of the ICC and actually helping these countries. We talk about having bigger T20 World Cups to give the likes of Netherlands and Scotland and stuff a leg up and some experience. But you've also got to play these teams outside of those major tournaments.
Yeah, no, you hit the nail on the head there. The ICC can give these nations test status to improve their cricket. And the ICC say, well, we want to improve test match cricket. But you look at Afghanistan. They play 1 test match every 2 years. How is that benefiting Afghanistan outside of white ball cricket? How is that? Same with Ireland.
The Ireland cricketers tweeting during the Ashes. He said, what was it? I can't remember his tweet exactly, so I do apologise to him. But he said,
just paraphrase it, James.
This Ashes is great. It would be nice to play some Test cricket or something like that, because Ireland haven't played for ages. Yeah.
Well, what's stopping from Ireland playing England every year? What's stopping them from having a rivalry of their own?
Yeah, or even if Afghanistan aren't playing much cricket, Test cricket, if Ireland aren't playing Test much cricket, get them to meet in Dubai and play Test cricket. It's not rocket science.
Exactly. Unfortunately, we were scheduled to play Afghanistan in a 1 test series. Unfortunately, which I've absolutely literally gone mad over this. We've pulled out due to political reasons. That doesn't benefit Afghanistan. That doesn't benefit these small test nations. Now, I understand where Australia.
But the Afghanistan's reply to Australia's withdrawal, because we know why Australia withdrew. They just didn't want to go, did they? They didn't want to go months in advance of that, and it was a convenient excuse. And I thought the Afghanistan's reply about, think of our cricketers, think of our cricket and the future of our cricket in this country. By not coming here, you're not making any difference to the political aspects in the country, but you basically, women aren't going to be playing cricket. The men aren't going to be playing cricket. If nobody plays us, then cricket dies in Afghanistan, and that isn't what we want to see either, is it? So,
I just thought that was really, really poor from Cricket Australia. Because Afghanistan have great players. We all know what Rashid Khan is. He comes to the Adelaide Strikers every year for the Big Bash and plays Big Bash cricket. So. Think about players like that. He comes all the way from Afghanistan. He plays cricket in Australia, and then we kind of. And I think he's the captain, incidentally, the captain of Afghanistan. They change that every week. I'm not sure yet. True. And then we cancel to it based on absolute bullshit political agendas. But you also mentioned, when's the last time Bangladesh played England in England? That's the same thing here. We haven't played New Zealand since 2015. 2015. Come to think about that. New Zealand are now a powerhouse in cricket.
They're your next door
Yeah,
neighbours.
exactly. Yeah, New Zealand's a powerhouse in world cricket now, and we haven't played in their country since 2015.
I mean, if West Indies come across to England to tour England, they should stop off in Ireland on the way, shouldn't they, and play at least one Test match there on the way. Same with any country coming to England. Put Ireland as part of that process. Same with Afghanistan. If you're going to tour the subcontinent, stop off in Dubai and play Afghanistan in a Test match.
Well, absolutely. Well, when West Indies go on these tours, they call it the tour of UK. Ireland's in UK, so play a damn Test match with them. If you want to call it a warm up game, so be it. So I just think that's where ICC can be a little bit better with that, in my opinion, a lot better actually.
We'll have this topic later on. There is a lot to discuss about which team should play Test cricket more and which team should not. But final thought on it's not about the Ashes, James. You obviously know this about this Virat Kohli issues that is going around in India. So what's your thought on that? Because Virat Kohli has also lost the captaincy in the ODI format. So what's your thought on that?
I feel for him to be honest. I've been critical of Virat's captaincy in the past because I think he's a bit too emotional and not as much. But I think the impact he's had on Indian cricket has been massive. It'll still continue. He's still going to be Test captain, but in the white ball, he's made it a professional setup. The culture of that team, in terms of fitness, in terms of fielding, in terms of the standards expected under Virat Kohli, have gone up several notches. So he should take a huge amount of pride in what he's given that Indian white ball side. I love Rohit Sharma. Mumbai Indians is my IPL team. Rohit Sharma is an absolute, a joy to watch, and he's a good captain as well. I'm sure he'll take the team in the right direction, and he obviously wants to stamp. He'll want to stamp his own authority on it as well. And Virat will continue to play. But I think because as I understood it, Gaurav, he basically decided to offload the T20 captaincy, but he was going to continue as the ODI captain until the BCCI took that off him. So he was actually sacked effectively as ODI captain. Yeah, which is unfortunate, isn't it, for a player of Virat's stature to actually have that. I don't think he deserves that. I think whether he's actually added anything to the ODI results under Virat, they've not won the World Cup. They were out in the semi-finals in England last time, and so that's a sort of secondary discussion. But I think it's the way it's handled, I think, more than anything, isn't it? It's the way it comes across to the public. It's the way it's handled. It's the way it shows.
That's the main thing.
Yeah.
That's the main issue, how it has been handled.
I think if you Sourav Ganguly, you sit down with Virat and you say, right, this is the way we want to move, but we want you to drive this in terms of you lead the agenda, Virat. When do you want to finish as ODI skipper? How do you want it to come across to the public? How do you effectively want to step down? That would have been the sensible way of doing it, rather than just basically chucking him in the rubbish bin, which is not the way to deal with a player of his stature in Indian cricket.
I've got one more final question. Sorry, Gaurav. Just mention captaincy. Is Joe Root being forced by the ECB to captain? Now let's say Joe Root loses his series 5-0. Right, let's say that, and Joe Root wants to step down. Let's say no. Let's be serious. Let's say Joe Root wants to step down, and ECB say, "Well, I'm sorry, Joe Root. There's no other captains that can replace you. You have to keep going." Could that be a possibility where Joe Root could be a captain that he doesn't want to be a part of, a team he doesn't want to be a part of?
I don't think you can
because there's no one else.
I don't think you can force somebody to captain. Lead them out to the middle at gunpoint and say, unless you captain, then you're going to. But I think there is an issue with English cricket that there isn't an obvious candidate to replace him.
Yeah.
I'd be very reluctant after Ben Stokes' previous disciplinary situations of having him as England Test captain. Although whether he do it, and his captaincy experience isn't massive anyway. Joss Butler, I don't think, has got a firm enough hold on those gloves to be captain, although England, the ECB seem to think he has. So he would possibly be the replacement, but I don't think that would be a good move either. I don't think England gain anything from Josh Buttler being captain over Joe Root being captain. And then you look elsewhere, the likes of Tom Abel and some of the others that are maybe standout captains on the county circuit haven't had that international experience yet. So it's asking a lot to make them captain and bring them in and to debut as captain. You can't really do that in this day and age. So it'd be interesting. But I think if England did lose 5-0, 4-0, there would be that discussion in English cricket. Is Joe Root the right man to take England forward? Indeed, is Chris Silverwood the right man to be in charge of the team in terms of the head coach role as well? I think I just kind of go back to where I started, really, in terms of I don't think Joe Root's a brilliant captain. I don't think Joe Root's a bad captain. I think he's a good Test captain. He's got that dressing room. They all love him. They would do anything he asked them to do. So I think from that perspective, he's got the dressing room. Silverwood's the same, and it's all about.
They're more man managers than technicians.
Yeah, but it's all about the problem with English cricket isn't Joe Root as captain. The problem with English cricket isn't Chris Silverwood as head coach. The problem with English cricket is the structure, the domestic setup, and the motives and the priorities that the ECB have in domestic cricket. That's got nothing to do with routine. It's got nothing to do with Chris Silverwood. So it's almost a poison chalice in a way getting the job, because you are hamstrung. Chris Silverwood is hamstrung with who he can pick and hamstrung with what happens. And obviously going through a COVID period as well, being a captain and head coach of an international team during bio bubbles, and it's a tough job, isn't it? It's a tough job.
Yes. I think we are done for the day. Thank you, James. It was a pleasure talking to you. I hope you've enjoyed the conversation.
James, Australia wouldn't know anything about bubbles because they've yet to play outside of Australia during this pandemic. So so they wouldn't know.
Yeah.
Cancelled South Africa, Afghanistan, Bangladesh. So they don't ask me that question, James. I wouldn't know.
Okay. So thank you, James Butler. It was a pleasure talking to you. We had a great night actually to have a conversation with you during this Ashes time, and we will definitely see you again after the second test and see you smiling in the second test by beating Australia 1-1, isn't it?
Just the final point, we never mentioned it. The pink ball element of this. We've got 2 pink ball test matches now. There's a little bit of a thought process in England that. Pink balls. England win pink ball test matches, so that's going to be great. Australia got a really good record in day-night test matches. Australia have got the likes of Pat Cummins and Josh Hazlewood who will get.
They're yet to lose a day-night test match.
Yeah, so they'll get something from a pink ball as well. So I think the pink ball thing, I think there is an element of lottery with the pink ball. It's when you get the pink ball in hand and when it starts to do its little bit of some magic, because you get little chunks of games. It's who's batting at that stage and who is bowling at that stage will dictate who wins that test match. And so there's an element of luck in a pink ball test match, which might prove to be a bit of a leveler. But I think anybody in England who's thinking, well, this isn't going to be 5-0 purely because there's pink ball test matches is clutching at straws to a degree.
I will say this.
Adelaide.
I will say this, James. I will say this. If you can win in Adelaide, and then somehow, we all know what the MCG pitch is, usually draws or absolute flooders attack. And if you can somehow get a result in Sydney, whether it's a draw, if you can go to Brisbane, to Hobart 1-1, I'm not saying anything here, but if you can go to Hobart 1-1, if it's a traditional Hobart test, this would be feeling like playing in England. Green top, bowling friendly conditions, and day-night test match, because it's about time that an Ashes series was in Hobart, just probably like Ashes in England, and Cardiff and other places. It's about time it's in Hobart. But if it's a traditional Hobart wicket, it will be probably favouring England's bowlers more than Australian bowlers, because it'd be like playing in England.
No, that's that way. What he said. I like that. I like that.
This is what you wanted to hear for the last time, isn't it?
It won't happen though, because we'll be up 4-0, so that won't happen. But I just thought I'd throw that out of there.
I do think, Lucas, it's actually a good move to take it to Hobart.
Absolutely.
You could have taken it to the biggest stadium in Australia, gotten as many spectators in as possible, made money, and just purely done it as it. And for once in cricket, money hasn't been the driver.
Oh God. Thank you, James. I think we are done for the day. Again, it was a pleasure talking to you. We will definitely see you again after the second test match, and let's see where this test match goes, where this Ashes series will go on. We'll love to see some competitive cricket from England side to beat this Aussie in Australia. Again, if India can do, Australia can do it also. So till then, thank you guys.
I'm happy with the beat downs.
Yeah.
I'm happy with the beat downs.
Yeah. Till then, thank you, James Butler. You want to say something?
Thank you so much, James.
Yes,
Thank you for
Lucas.
coming in. We'll see you in the second test match where we're up 2-0.
Yeah. Till then, guys, do like the video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon. Till then, we will meet some other time.